Hi and welcome to another Ask GMBN Tech, the weekly Q&A session. If you've got any questions about mountain bike tech, get them in the comments right underneath there. Use that hashtag Ask GMBN Tech. Right, let's get cracking with this week's questions then. Right, first up, what have we got? Okay, so from Yunko123, he says, I heard from a guy that running higher tyre pressures by 4 to 5 psi will make your tyre perform better since it was designed and engineered to be that shape instead of being deformed. Is this true? You could say it's kind of true and also not at all, because of the fact there's so many things to take into account when you're talking about tyres. Now, just on screen, you see some different shots of different style tyres, like some cross-country tyres, some enduro tyres, some heavy-duty downhill style tyres, and even some tyres on e-bikes, for example, over on GMBN. Now, they all have different tyre tread profiles, they have different tyre shapes, different tyre sizes, and then, of course, the rim size. There's so many different factors to take into account. Now, arguably, for a cross-country tyre, running it slightly firmer will improve things because of the fact the tyre is made from a very thin carcass. So, for example, something I found on my cross-country tyres, which are single ply, extremely thin, and I'm running them with a 28mm rim, which does offer them a good amount of support. I still need to run them quite firm because I'm quite heavy. I'm about 92 kilos at the moment, give or take. So I'm running about 26 psi in the front tyre and anything north of 28 to 30 in the rear. If I run any softer than that, the tyre doesn't have enough support and it deforms and it doesn't perform like it needs to. So in response to your question, kind of, yes. However, with downhill tyres, enduro tyres and even trail tyres, you want to be maximising on the fact that the tyre carcass is much stiffer and much stronger. Therefore, it retains its shape better and you can make the most of running your tyre pressure lower. Now, lower pressure will actually roll faster off-road because it's not going to be bouncing you off the ground, basically. Any time when the tyre is on the ground, you're going to be going faster. Now, of course, there's other things to take into account. You get more footprint, you get more traction. The tyre does what it's supposed to do. So you've got to take these things into account. So kind of, yes, you do need to have them within a tyre pressure band, which is recommended on the sidewall of the tyre. But also, you need to kind of make it up your own way and discover these things. But never go too hard or too soft because you're just going to get things wrong. And actually, something I recommend everyone gets is one of these little fellas. This is a digital tyre gauge. Now, this is a toe peak one. I use these all the time, to be honest, when I'm out riding, chopping and changing. Bearing in mind, I'm running a variety of different bikes and different tyres, sometimes with inserts in them, always tubeless though. So you can change the characteristics of a tyre with all of these things. Now, and of course, being able to monitor that and get a good reading. Don't always trust your pump. A gauge only has one job, and that's to read the pressure on your tyre. So they're really good things to get. Now, one other thing to take into account as well is the fact that tyres are massively affected by the shape of the rim. So you might have a 2.3-inch tyre with a good shoulder on it, and the shoulder, you'd use it in the same way as a snowboarder would use the edge of the snowboard, really to cut an edge, basically to rail a turn. So if you're running a narrow rim, let's say with that 2.3-inch size, the tyre is going to be more of a teardrop shape, yeah? So the top part of the tyre is going to be slightly more rounded, yeah? And then those shoulders aren't necessarily going to be in the place where you need them to be. So you can actually cheat the system a bit by running a wider rim to give your tyre a squarer profile. So if your tyre is naturally a bit rounder and you want it to have more of an edge, a wider rim can help offer that. And again, it's just one of the other things that really affects the characteristics of the way a tyre rides. Hopefully some of that makes sense. Next up is from James Katz. Cool name. It's K-A-T-Z as well. I've got Sram Code R brakes with a 200mm rotor up front and a 180 on the rear. I recently bought a Hope floating rotor in orange to go with the colour scheme of the bike. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Once I'd installed it and put the wheel in, the rotor made a rubbing sound against the pads. Do you know how to sort it out or if they fit my particular brake? Okay, so Hope rotors, they obviously fit Hope brakes, but they do a variety of rotors, including vented ones, which won't because they're about 3mm thick. They do a variety of different rotors to fit all different brand brakes on the market. But something very important to say is, so your SRAM brakes will have a rotor between 180 and 185 mil thick, or 180.5, and the Hope ones come in that size, but they also come in 2.3, which is the size that TRP and some other brands use. So there might be a chance you've got the thicker rotor, in which case that would explain it. The other option is you haven't reset your pistons, so you want to be doing that basically. Perhaps you can unwind the bike point adjust, or if it's a Shimano lever, it'll have the free stroke adjustment at the lever, and that might help. But see if you can reset the pistons first and see if it makes a difference. But definitely check if it's the rotor is compatible, because visually they'll look the same, but just want to be slightly thicker, and you won't really be able to see that by the eye. You'll need to use some verniers or digital calipers to measure that. So don't forget that most brakes are 1.85, and of course the bigger brakes or the bigger rotor brakes tend to be a little bit thicker for a bit more support. I think you get that on some of the smaller ones as well, ironically, because they're so small that they suffer from heat problems, so they have a thicker rotor to help dissipate the heat. Yeah, so 2.3 mil thick. So yeah, check that one out, and hopefully you've got the right ones. You just need to reset those pads in the system. In fact, we've got some videos on resetting pads, and so hopefully there'll be a link for you in the description underneath about common brake mistakes. I made that video a while back for Shimano, and in that I deal with that, but the principles are the same whether you're running Magura brakes, Shimano, TLP, anything. So hopefully that might help you out as well. Chris Walker, how do you know when you need to replace a bike because it's too old? Okay, well firstly, you don't need to replace a bike because it's old. You can keep working on a bike as long as you want to, within reason. Okay, so if you've got an old relic, you will find at some point you're going to struggle to get certain components for the bike. They'll be harder to get. However, when you do find those components, let's say it's brake pads for a cantilever pad, and you find a supplier that's got them, just buy 4 or 5 sets and you'll be good for a few years from there. It's not really a problem, so it's up to you really. Now, if you're going through parts, then yes, then it's going to start costing you more money than it's worth to keep the bike going, and that is when you want to consider your options with it. But there's no need to buy a new bike. Any mountain bike, off-road is fun. It doesn't matter if it's old, if it's new, if it's cheap, if it's expensive. The whole point is getting out on your bike and having fun off-road. So don't feel pressured by the marketing you see in the industry to buy that new latest bike that's a quiver killer and all that nonsense. Any mountain bike is good fun for riding on mountain bike trails. Don't let anyone judge you on that, okay? So just go and have fun and enjoy the bike. But one note to say is, if you have a fairly modern bike, this is to any other viewers out there listening, you do need to make a bit of a choice what you want to do with the bike. Think of them as cars in the respect that you might keep that car and basically just drive it until it's done. You might want to put 235,000 miles on it, drive it to the moon. And in which case it's going to be worth no money at the end of that point. Yeah, so you're basically riding it and killing it. Or you could do what many people choose to do. They'll keep upgrading or keep swapping the cars out, so they lose a minimal amount. So let's just say it could be every year, it could be every 3 years. You could do the same with your bike to keep the value up. Ride it for a year, get some frame protection on it when you buy the bike, so the frame stays really good condition, for scratches and all the stuff that would put you off as a second-hand or a third-hand purchaser. Just think about that sort of thing, So sometimes it's better in the long run to keep chopping the bikes in to keep your value and keep you on a more expensive bike, or just run it until it's done. Up to you. Whatever you do, just go and have fun and don't fret about it too much, because mountain bikes, even old ones, you can fix them up. It's all good. Next up's from Rob E. Hi Dotty, I currently have SRAM Guide T levers and calipers on my 2020 Trance Advanced Pros. That's the Giant, nice bike that, really nice. These brakes are leaving a lot to be desired, and I'm being put off upgrading them, contemplating. I've been put off upgrading them, contemplating my options. I like the modulation of the SRAMs, but not the price of the better options. Right, I get ya. Question: is it possible to install Guide RSC or Code RSC levers and keep the existing Guide calipers and hoses in place, or would I be wasting my time? No, you can do that. Not with the Codes though. The Codes, as far as I know, have slightly thicker hoses, although Code and Guides are interchangeable, but you have to change the hosing system and banjos and other stuff as well. But within the Guide system, as far as I know, the Guide T has the same caliper as the RSCs and the RS model, maybe the Cs. So yeah, you can do that definitely. So check your local bike shop. It might be hard to get hold of those individual components. That might be your only slight Achilles heel here. It might be easier to actually get a set of brakes, but by all means, you can definitely upgrade the levers, and that will give you what you want from the lever. Give you a lever adjuster, give you a nicer feel, the more premium feel. the blade bite point adjustment, all that stuff that you want, I think, from what you're saying. So yes, you can do that, but just be cautious that with the codes, you definitely have a slightly oversized hose, so you'll probably have to look at changing those fittings as well. But yeah, quite a lot of riders do chop and change the brakes and levers. Stay in the same system, generally you can do it, and that applies to Shimano as well. You can swap for 2-part or 4-part calipers between SLX and XTR levers, that sort of thing. So you can chop and change. Next up's from Sammy Hamaday. For my dropper cable routing, I stuffed dental floss in my down tube and vacuumed it out the seat tube. I've heard this before, yeah. I then tape the outer cable to it firmly and push the housing through while gently guiding it with the floss. After that, I just feed the inner cable through the housing. It was nerve-wracking because the floss can snap at any moment, but it worked in the end. Do you have a better way of doing it? I should know about it on my bike. Well, firstly, that is a good hack. I've heard of people doing it before, and I've tried it, and I couldn't make it work. So maybe you've got a really good, powerful vacuum cleaner. I don't know. All right, so Park do their internal cable routing kit. Hold up, I'll grab my one. It's one of the most useful tools you can get, but might not necessarily be something that you want to buy because of the fact that it's quite a specialist bit of kit. I actually got mine in 2016 in a fit of rage because the entire bike industry lost its mind and started using internal cable routing without thinking about how they do it. So essentially you have cables in this with different fittings on, and you've got an extremely powerful magnet. So what you do, you basically chase one of these cables through your frame first with that magnet, basically pull it through, and then you basically pull the cable or the hose back through the other way using this. So there's different attachments on the end to sit on the outer cable or to actually run through a bit of housing and pull it through that way. So really, really good system, absolutely brilliant. Again, it does cost a bit of money, but there is another way you can do it. So RockShox, with their reverb seat post, they include a little red barbed tool. Hold on, I'm just going to turn this button off and I'm going to find that tool, and we'll come back to this in a second. Hold on. Okay, found it. So this little fella here is basically a tool for fitting a RockShox reverb to your bike. Enables you to pull the existing hose back through using this and pull the fresh hose through. It's threaded on both sides essentially, so you can put two sections of outer cable together. So if you do have outer hosing already in your bike, you can use that to pull the new stuff through. That's a useful little approach to have. Other than that, there's not many other packs you can have. That one or the Park Tool kit is pretty much the best things that I can think of. And swearing helps. Next up is from Antonio. Are the Galfer brakes, so Galfer, in case you don't know, they're like an aftermarket company. They do, I think they might be from Spain. They do finned brake pads, vented rotors, that sort of stuff. Are they a better option than the original brake pads and rotors that come with a bike? For example, Sram or Shimano. I see a lot of people refer to them as an update comparing to the original ones. I don't necessarily think they are an upgrade, they're just an alternative. You can have ones with more venting, which arguably, if you're riding in hotter conditions, are a better thing to have. But the amount of venting on them also means you've got less braking surface, so it can wear out your brake pads a bit quicker because it can be a bit more aggressive on them. And also, they come in larger sizes, so yes, technically they could be a benefit. They come in a 223mm size, which some people are starting to use on 29-inch wheel bikes now, or on bigger downhill bikes. Although, that said, SRAM and Shimano are starting to offer the bigger sizes, whether it's 223 or 220. So no, they're just an alternative, and as long as the thickness of the rotor is the same as what you have, generally 1.85 is the thickness for Shimano, SRAM and other similar brakes. TLP are 2.3, Hope are between 1.85 and 2.3 depending, and also they have their V4 caliper, which is the vented rotor, which is a twin skin rotor like on a motorbike, and I think that's 3mm thick. That thing's massive. Pretty cool piece of kit though. Okay, next up's from Joseph Howie. I don't understand why the market encourages us to spend significantly more on lightweight bikes through either high-end carbon frames or top-tier components, only for us to undo it by strapping gear and a kilogram water on the frame. Surely it would make sense to carry extra weight on your body to maximise bike feel. You know that there's things called hydration packs, right? There's loads of them out there. Evoc make them, Camelback made the original ones, there's Source, there's a number of different brands that offer those. So it's entirely up to you. Bike brands are only doing this because there's been a demand. So they're latching onto the fact that, oh, well, yeah, there's room for a water bottle on the frame. People want water bottles on their frames. And the fact is, yes, it is useful to have a water bottle on the frame because it gives you the option whether you want to do it or not. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, in my opinion. So, for example, if I'm going out for a shorter ride, I'll take a water bottle on my bike and maybe a tiny hip pack with the bare minimum in it. If I'm going out all day, I'll take a hydration pack and I'll take the kitchen sink in it. I'll take the whole lot in there. But the problem is with having those bigger bags, you tend to overload them. Now, in the early 90s, when I started mountain biking, you only had water bottles. And if you wanted to carry anything, it was in your jersey pockets or a little saddle bag, perhaps underneath your saddle for an inner tube, maybe a CO2 cartridge, that sort of style setup. Then Camelback came along and it changed everything. So you could ditch all that stuff off. You could have 2 litres of water on your back, in a bag, and you could fit an inner tube in there, a pump in there, whatever you want. But the problem was, because of the fact that they were so good, Camelback saw the market was just going to be massive for these things, and instead of just having them as a hydration pack, which is what they were to start with. In fact, a cool little story, they're invented by a surgeon, as far as I remember it, the guy's a surgeon, and he basically did a triathlon, and it was in extremely hot weather, so he used an IV bag, like a drip bag basically, put it in a sock and put it in his back pocket, and had the IV thing over his shoulder, and it worked to treat. So he then went into developing a way of having a better solution to have on your bike, which is brilliant. So yes, bikes are marketing it kind of in the wrong way like that, but it gives you an option whether you want to put it on the bike or put it on your bag. It's entirely up to you, and I think options are a great thing. So don't think just because you've got a water bottle cage mounts on your bike, you've got to have one. Do what you want. But for the record, adding a bit of weight onto your bike, yes, it'll feel heavier when you pick it up, but it won't make it ride any worse. One of the reasons e-bikes ride so well off-road is because it's got so much weight on that part of the frame. So it's all about your sprung, your unsprung mass. So you want your wheels and your suspension units at either end of the bike to be nice and light. The frame actually doesn't matter. In fact, a bit of weight on the frame makes your suspension work even better. Combination with light wheels and good suspension and a heavier frame, and you've got a recipe for a bike that's going to handle amazingly off-road. If you take off too much weight off the frame, the suspension just can't physically keep up with it, despite how good that suspension is. You're always going to be losing out to a heavier frame. So interesting food for thought there. Next up's from Craig Greenwood. Doddy, what is the correct standard when fitting a seat clamp? Bolt to the rear and logo facing forwards or the other way around? Asking for a friend. Honest. Yeah, okay, mate. There isn't really a standard as such. So the thing that matters is where the line is, or the crease, or the gap, the groove, whatever you want to call it, in the top of the seat tube. If it's facing forwards, then you want to have the bolt facing forwards. If it's facing backwards, you want to have the bolt facing back, because when you adjust that bolt and clamp the clamp together, the slot is there basically to allow the tube to slightly compress over that seat post. That's why it's there. In the UK, we always tended to prefer bikes that had the slot on the front, because of the fact you just get the spray will go down your seat tube. And on old bikes, if they were made of steel, you'd get corrosion on the inside. Less of a problem with alloy and carbon bikes these days, but still, it is a bit manky when you get stuff down the back there. But running the clamp the other way around won't do it any good. So always run the clamp with the bolt on the same side as the slot or the groove or whatever you want to call it, and that will make it work properly. Okay, that's out of questions for this week. Well, that went fast, really fast. Well, it did from my point of view. How was it for you guys? Hopefully you enjoyed the show. If you've got any questions about bike tech, let us know in those comments, and we'll see you next time. See you later.